Welcome to the Los Angeles County Historic Resources Survey meeting for Florence-Firestone. Thank you for joining us today. We're going to take a moment to let people settle in and then we will get started. Please note this meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the project website, which we will share with you in a future slide. Bienvenido a la Junta de la Encuesta de Recursos Históricos del Condado de Los Ángeles para Florence-Firestone. Vamos a tomarnos un momento para que la gente se acomode y luego comenzaremos. Tengan en cuenta que esta reunión se está grabando y estará disponible en el sitio web del proyecto que compartiremos con usted en un momento. So it looks like more people have joined in, so I will go ahead and get started. For those of you who have just joined, we would like to welcome you to the Los Angeles County Historic Resources Survey meeting for Florence-Firestone. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available on the project website, which we will share with you in a future slide. Bienvenido a la Junta de la Encuesta de Recursos Históricos del Condado de Los Ángeles para Florence-Firestone. Tenga en cuenta que esta reunión se está grabando y estará disponible en el sitio web del proyecto que compartiremos con usted en un momento. Language support is available. To listen to this presentation in Spanish, click the globe symbol at the bottom of your screen. We have here today Marina Sorache Ferreiro providing Spanish translation. If you have any technical difficulties getting to the Spanish channel, please use the Q&A box to let us know. El soporte de idiomas está disponible. Para escuchar esta presentación en español, haga clic en el símbolo globo en la parte inferior de su pantalla. Hoy tenemos aquí Marina Sorache Ferreiro brindando traducción al español. Si tiene alguna dificultad técnica para acceder al canal en español, utilice el botón de chat para hacérnoslo saber. So before we get started, here are a few housekeeping items. Please note, everyone joining the meeting is muted by default. You may use the raise hand feature to talk. You can access the raise hand feature under the reaction selection menu, or you can use the Q&A tool to submit questions as shown on the slide. Also, at the end of the workshop, the county would like you to respond to a brief exit survey. So we will begin with some brief introductions. My name is Janet Rodriguez, and I'm today's meeting facilitator and a member of the DUDEC consultant team, collaborating with the Los Angeles County Planning Department on this project. So I will now turn it over to county staff for a brief hello, and then the rest of the DUDEC team here today will briefly introduce themselves. Pat?
I think Dean was gonna do the introductions today.
Sure. So hi, I'm Dean Edwards. I coordinate the county's historic preservation program, and we also have Pat Hachia here. Pat.
Hi, everybody. I'm the project lead for the Metro Area Plan. Tonight's meeting is on the Florence-Firestone Historic Survey, which is folded in as part of the Metro Area Plan project. And I think now we're back to DUDEC and Sarah.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much, Pat and Dean. We are the DUDEC team, and we were retained by the county to prepare a historic context statement and conduct a historic resources survey for the community of Florence-Firestone. I am Sarah Corder, the built environment lead for DUDEC, and have been managing this project on the consultant side. And tonight I have with me Janet, who you've already met, as well as two of our architectural historians who have been critical to this project, Allison Lyons and Nicole Frank. We want to thank you all for being here tonight to learn about the progress that we've made on this important project. I would like to start by walking everybody through our meeting objectives. We are going to provide an overview of the project, discuss our community engagement process, go through the purpose of a historic context statement and a historic resource survey, And then I will present some of the context themes that were identified, our survey findings, as well as project recommendations and next steps. At the end, we will open it up for Q&A. The Florence-Firestone project is called a Historic Resources Survey, and it includes the development of a historic context statement and a historic resources survey for the Florence-Firestone community. The project is also part of the larger Metro Area Plan project, also known as the MAP project. While some of you may be familiar with the larger MAP project, I wanted to take a moment to run through the larger project goals and then get into the specifics of how the Florence-Firestone project will work within the larger MAP project. As you can see from this slide, the MAP project goals are to update existing policies and recommendations, prioritize equity and environmental justice, make it safer to move within communities, to study all aspects of future housing, and another important goal of the larger metro area plan is to promote community identity and historic preservation, which is where my team and the Florence-Firestone project comes in. For the project, the county retained DUDEC's built environment team to conduct a supplemental study of the community that would be a deeper dive into the community's land development history and those places that make it special. As you see on the map on this slide, the project area follows the community boundary. It is the only community that was surveyed in the metro planning area because it was funded by a grant that was obtained in response to the community's concern about redevelopment impacts to their historic resources. One of the most important parts of developing a historic context statement is community engagement. This project and report would not have been possible without the support of the community. Tonight, I would like to specifically thank the Junta's Florence-Firestone group and local historian Jonathan Pacheco Bell for their significant contributions to this project. As you can see from our slide, we have been working on this project since November of 2021, and we have implemented a lot of different community engagement tools so that we could make sure that we reach as many people as possible. Some of the tools that we used included workshops, public meetings, online mapping, social media, stakeholder meetings, stakeholder document review, small group meetings, and phone interviews with community members. All of this community engagement allowed us to dial into the spirit and the community and accurately reflect the history. When we talk about a historic context statement, this is the first major component of any historic resources survey. The historic context statement is a narrative document that lays out the community's land development history. The historic context statement, we also call it an HCS, identifies important themes, property types, architectural trends, patterns of development, and significant events and people. The HCS also provides information for the Historic Resources Survey. Throughout the course of this project, there were numerous historical events that influenced the development of Florence-Firestone. Such events include the Long Beach earthquake in 1933, discriminatory housing practices in the 1930s and 40s, white flight in 1948 and again in 1965, the Watts Uprising in 1965, a variety of social justice movements and organizations in the 1960s and 70s, factory closures in the 70s and 80s, and the Los Angeles Uprising in 1992. Both positive and negative repercussions are present in Florence-Firestone as a result of these significant events. There is a lack of pre-1933 buildings, racial tension, shifts in demographics, gang activity, distrust of government, diminished community identity, community and civil awareness of issues, public art installations, redevelopment and demolition of historic properties, gentrification, creation of community organizations, interest in historic preservation, and transit improvements like the TOD that is happening in Florence-Firestone. As part of the historic context statement component of the project, we identified significant themes in the history of the community. The following slides allow you to see some of the major themes and important periods, as well as some representative images. All of the themes that were discussed in the historic context statement can be reviewed in detail, so I'm going to move through these slides pretty quickly. At the very early days of Florence-Firestone, agriculture was very important, with two periods of development, the Rancho era and then a farming era. Another major theme that we saw was industrial development and its three periods of development with rail, oil, and manufacturing. The third theme that we identified was commercial development, with an early commercial period, a post-earthquake commercial development, and then commercial development after the uprisings. One of the biggest themes that we saw in Florence-Firestone, as well as the rest of the map, is residential development and the sub-theme of unfair planning and discriminatory housing practices such as redlining. Civil rights and social justice have also played an important role in the development and the history of Florence-Firestone. And education and parks and recreation have also been significant major themes that we have identified as a result of our research. Now that we have an understanding of how the historic context statement part of the project is laid out, I'd like to move on to the historic resources survey component of the project. The survey component of the project included an inventory of historic edge places and buildings within the community boundaries that were constructed before 1977. Surveyors conducted field surveys in June of this year of 8,178 properties that were of historic age. As a result of the survey, DUDAC has identified priority historic resources for nomination in the community, properties that are eligible for designation, and important community properties that have the potential for designation but require further study. During this survey, many architectural styles and building types were identified. This slide captures some of the examples that we saw during the survey, ranging from residential architecture to education and even programmatic architecture. So some of the examples that you see here on the screen, Dutch colonial revival, that was a little surprising to us. That was a fun find for our survey team. Programmatic is a pretty rare form, so that was very exciting for us to find. This very large Queen Anne and some Art Deco, Spanish colonial revival, and streamlined modern. Once we surveyed properties that had architectural integrity and an association with a theme from the historic context statement, were divided into these categories. Priority nominations are the properties that clearly reflected significant connections to historical themes in the historic context statement, were flagged as important to the community with the historic resources mapping tool or stakeholder engagement activities, and have the architectural integrity to continue to convey historical significance. The second category of properties is eligible properties for designation. These properties were largely identified during this survey and were found to have a high level of architectural integrity. These properties are representative of architectural styles seen throughout the area, such as Queen Anne, Craftsman, and mid-century modern. Properties that also have architectural styles for the community like brutalism are also represented in this category. I will show some examples of these building styles as we move forward in the presentation. The last category, which was a category that we created for this project, we have titled Important Community Properties. During our stakeholder engagement, we identified a lot of properties with the community that have a lot of importance to them and we believe have importance to the larger period of history associated with the community. However, these properties, once we surveyed them, they tended to have some architectural integrity issues. So they weren't an immediate, let's designate property. They were a property that we flagged for future study. And then once that is completed, we feel that they could be eligible for designation and nomination. A full list of these properties are provided in the survey report on the county's website. From our survey, we identified 16 of those priority nominations, 45 eligible for designation properties, and 39 important community properties. Would like to take a minute to go through the following slides that show some of our priority nominations as well as eligible and important community properties. On the priority nomination side, we saw a range of property types, including residential, commercial, civic, and institutional. A lot of different periods of development and a lot of different styles happening out there, as you can see here, ranging from Queen Anne to some standard commercial, streamlined, modern, and also some infrastructure with the pedestrian bridge that is near Roosevelt Park. We continue to have the presence of commercial architecture as well as pulling in legacy businesses, which was something that was very important to the community and that was uncovered during this project. So we have a couple of legacy businesses highlighted here, and we also have some more architectural styles highlighted here, such as Mission Revival and our programmatic that we saw earlier, and mid-century modern. This last slide is kind of rounding out our priority nominations. We did find 2 residential properties that we haven't talked about yet. One was a very small Victorian cottage that was in very good shape. And we also found this property, which was the Bunchy Carter residence. And so it has a connection to a significant person in the history of Florence-Firestone. Our other commercial buildings that were identified are the Gentry Theater, as well as the Florence Car Wash. The next category of properties is the eligible properties. And as I mentioned, these were identified during survey and have the needed architectural integrity to be nominated for designation. We have a Queen Anne, some brutalism, Spanish colonial revival, mid-century, craftsman. Just giving you some examples of some of the properties on this list. We're not going to go through all the properties on the eligible list. Here are a few more nice Victorian cottages out there, some Art Deco, some more mid-century modern, Mediterranean revival. The last group of properties, as I introduced earlier, is the important community properties. These are some of the examples of the properties that were flagged by the community and we believe have the potential for designation if additional research is conducted on them. Now I'd like to talk about our not eligible properties. The remaining properties within the community were found to be not eligible. There were 8,077 properties identified as not eligible. Properties in this category had significant architectural integrity issues, were not identified as important community properties during the project, and did not have a strong connection to any of the themes in the historic context statement. Throughout the course of the survey, we noted many changes to the buildings in this category that prevented them from reflecting their original architecture style or history. Such changes included additions, replacement storefronts, subdivision of buildings, significant changes in use, replacement windows, and recladding. These are a few examples of those not eligible properties that we found that had a lot of those alterations. There is a full list of the not eligible properties in the survey that will be available in the final survey report. But there were a lot of alterations out there. So that was a little shocking to us, but that is what we saw. Once a survey and context were completed, we developed a series of project recommendations based on our findings. The number one thing that we think is important for the community is to preserve historic resources by increasing the number of designated properties within the community. All properties on the priority list and the eligible properties list have the ability to be brought forward for nomination. We also found a trend of legacy businesses, and this was also a repeating theme in the larger metro area plan. And there are some recommendations that are being fed from Florence-Firestone into that plan about the legacy business preservation. We also are asking that the county consider our recommendation to utilize our technology and our findings from the survey to improve the plan check procedure to help protect buildings from being demolished. We also believe that it's important to create a sense of place and history within the commercial areas that remain in the community. All of these recommendations are being taken into consideration for the larger metro area plan, and they are also very detailed in our report, which is available on the county's website. There are many benefits of historic preservation, so I wanted to just spend a couple of minutes speaking to this. The recognition and identification of important community places and history is something that we have accomplished with this project, and we'd like to continue to push forward as things begin to be preserved and hopefully nominated and designated. Historic preservation also allows those communities to keep what is important and improve it if they need to. And we believe that preservation helps to create a sense of community pride and a sense of place. And the last but not least is that there are financial and legal incentives for historic preservation. At this time, I'd like to turn the presentation over to Dean so that he can talk about some of the other benefits of historic preservation and the Historic Resources Survey.
Thank you, Sarah. So Sarah just covered the benefits of historic preservation, and I like to cover the benefits of doing a historic resource survey. So the first one is it streamlines the entitlement process and reduces the cost for discretionary projects. So property owners and their developers, they want some certainty in terms of their project and knowing if there's going to be certain regulations applied to them. And that also includes with historic resources. So they want to know, is there a historic resource on their property or not? And this is most important with discretionary projects, which are subject to the California Environmental Quality Act. So if there is no survey for that project area or that project site, and there's a building on there that's more than 45 years old and it looks like it could be a historic resource, we would require a historic resource assessment to make that determination. And those are quite expensive. So with a survey, we don't have to go through that process, and it does expedite the project for the property owner or the developer. Probably the most important benefit of doing a survey is it provides the public the opportunity to nominate prior to a project application being submitted. So as the community is experienced with the Florence car wash, they found out about that project, and then there was an attempt to nominate, but at that time it's already too late. So for a nomination to be effective and to protect that historic resource until there's a designation, the nomination application has to be found complete before the project application is found complete. So by the time that you hear about a project, it is usually too late for both, I see that, for both the public and maybe even the county to act. So that's why we're here today. We're letting you know what your historic resources are. These, you want to start thinking about how you can move those to our register, which is through the nomination process. And I'll be talking about that on the next slide. But I'll complete with one other benefit for about a historic resource survey is it identifies properties that owners can nominate in preparation for a Mills Act. So if a property owner has a historic resource on the property, has been determined to be eligible, at that point they can have it nominated. And then once it's designated, they'll be eligible for a Mills Act contract. So the Mills Act program is a state program that authorizes local jurisdictions to enter into contracts with historical property owners, where the owners agree to maintain and restore their property in exchange for substantial property tax relief. It can be over 50%. I think we're seeing about 60% property tax savings right now. Next slide, please. So in terms of nomination, the public can nominate, the property owner can nominate, and the county can nominate either through the Landmarks Commission or through the Board of Supervisors. So with owner consent, the nomination fee is $1,392, and without owner consent, it's $4,636. Once a property has been designated, the way that it's preserved is through the certificate of appropriateness process. And that's basically an entitlement that's required to review work to ensure that the project's not going to have an adverse impact on the character defining features of that historic resource, or essentially a landmark in this case. So character defining features are those materials, forms, locations, spatial configurations, uses, and cultural associations or meanings that contribute to the historic character of a historic resource that must be retained to preserve its character. So designation and preservation is really just maintaining those character defining features in place. It still means even once a property has been designated, it can still be improved. There can be additions added. If the lot is large enough, additional buildings can be built. So it doesn't force the property to stay in time. It's really just those character defining features that need to be maintained. Next slide, please. So if anybody is interested in nominating or a Mills Act program, I can be contacted at preservation@planning.lacounty.gov. And we also have a lot of resources on the program website, which is also on the slide before you. Back to you, Sarah. You're muted.
I knew I was going to do it at least once tonight, so thank you. Thank you so much, Dean. I'd like to just kind of round out our presentation tonight, talking about what our final steps are and providing locations of the documents that we've discussed tonight. We have a public comment period open on the documents until August 31st. So we will be collecting all of that feedback and making document revisions. We are scheduled to appear before the Landmark and Records Commission in September. We will also be taking the work that was done for this project, as well as the Metro Area Plan, Historic Context Statement, and we will be using that to develop policies pertaining to historic preservation in the Metro Area Plan. And hopefully we will be able to see some nominations of these properties that have been identified as eligible as a result of this project. So the feedback that I mentioned, you may download the document from the county's website, and you can submit any feedback to the Metro Area Plan at dudec.com email. This email comes directly to my team, and we will respond with any questions or anything like that. But we definitely encourage everyone to review the document and submit any feedback that they have. And then where can you get more information? If you want to get more information about the project as a whole, if you want to email the planning department, you can also email us for DUDEC. There's also a phone number there. We also have social media if you would like to follow us on social media. And now I'd like to go ahead and open it up for Q&A, but first I'd like to thank everybody for listening to our presentation and for attending tonight. We're very excited about this project and happy about all the work that's been done and all the community support that we've had for it. So Janet, if you wouldn't mind doing the Q&A now, that would be awesome.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Sarah. So just again, you can raise your hand, use the raise hand feature, and then we can go ahead and mute you. And again, you can use the Q&A tool to submit questions as shown on the slide. So I'm going to go ahead and check our Q&A. And I see a hand raised. Yanel, am I pronouncing that correctly?
Hello.
Yes, you are unmuted.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the presentation and your work on this project. I have two questions to start. So I know you all went through the survey findings section where it had it split into 3 categories, like priority, eligible for designation, important community properties. I noticed that for each one, so I guess starting with priority, there's 16 that are mentioned, but I counted in the appendix, which I think is the full list of the properties. There's only 11. For the eligible for designation, it mentions there's 45 properties, but only 27 are in the appendix. And then for important community properties, there's 40 mentioned, but only 31 listed. I guess I was just wondering if that's a mistake, or are there are more missing that are going to be added?
Okay, thank you for your question. Is there anyone from the DUDEC staff or county that wants to take that question?
I believe that there may be some outdated information on that appendix, unfortunately. Allison has the appendix pulled up right now, but I based all of the survey findings information off of the report and not off of the appendix. So I think that there could have been a little bit of a miscommunication there. I do believe that the numbers we presented here are the accurate ones, and the numbers that you're seeing in the appendix is actually the error. So I will make that correction and post, we'll get a new appendix posted that it actually reflects the totals that we're presenting here.
Thanks,
Thank
Sarah.
you so much, Janelle, for bringing that to our attention. That is a definite mistake on our part.
Then we also have a question in the Q&A box. So the question asks, by whom is the preservation process determined? What kinds of considerations are made during the process? Dean, do you want to take the question?
Sure. Pat, were you going to take that? I saw your name there. Okay, good. I'll take it. So I'm assuming they're asking about the designation process and how it was established. That would be our historic preservation ordinance. It was a public process, as all of our ordinances are, and it went through the Landmarks Commission, the Regional Planning Commission, and then was ultimately adopted by the Board of Supervisors.
Thank
Dean,
you, Dean.
I think Manuel is asking maybe how does the nomination process occur? Who's the decision maker on approving nominations?
Oh, thanks. And I think you're actually asking about the designation process. So the nomination begins with an application, unless it's a county nomination. County nominations would happen at a public meeting, either the board or the Landmarks Commission. So once it's nominated, then the application is evaluated to determine if the property is indeed eligible. And then it is prepared for public hearing, the first hearing being with the Landmarks Commission, who would make a recommendation to the Board of Supervisors that it either meets the criteria or not, and then the board would ultimately make that decision.
Great, thank you, Dean. Okay, and so we have another question in the Q&A box. So it says, are owners being notified that their property is eligible for historic nomination?
I can answer that one too. So at this time, they are not being notified. That is something that we are going to be considering internally. We actually have another survey area where there needs to be a basically a letter that's sent out to let them know that their property is eligible. So that's something that we hope to do this year.
Thank you, Dean. So I don't see any more questions or any hands raised. If you have any, oh, so one came in. Okay, can you share the link to the presentation that you shared with everyone today? Yes, the presentation and a recording of the presentation is going to be available on the project website, and we can include that in the chat. Okay, so Nicole just pops it in the chat. So you can find the project webpage in the chat. You know, I just gave you permissions to unmute.
So another question I had, I noticed that there's a section like all the way at the end of the report, that there will be a DPR forms that will be posted, I guess, eventually. And I know those forms could be helpful for nominations in the future, like helpful reference to have. I wanted to know which properties are you all planning to do the DPR forms for?
Sure, thanks, Yael. Just to make sure I heard you correctly, because it's kind of hard to hear you. What type of forms is it? The DPR forms? Is that what you're asking?
Yes, sorry, yeah, DPR forms.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
I can take that question. Thank you. That's a great question. The DPR forms are going to be part of the final deliverable packet that we will be presenting at the Landmarks Commission. So they will be publicly available for you to access at any time. We will be preparing DPR forms for all of the eligible properties that were identified in the survey. So both those eligible properties and the priority nomination properties will be receiving DPR forms. And those should be available by the 22nd of September. And if there's something you would like in the meantime or after that, please feel free to reach out to our team here at DUDAC, because we're more than happy to provide those to you once they've been approved by the county.
Thank you, Sarah. I don't see any questions currently or any hands raised.
Okay, well, we will move on to the last two items. Pat, would you mind to speak to the parking survey just a little bit for those who are on the call?
So for those of you who kind of have been following us through the Florence-Firestone TOD specific plan, and you know that part of the reason why we're here tonight is because of your efforts during that plan process to advocate for a historic resource survey. The other thing you guys advocated for was our parking study, which we were able to get funds and get started this year. So you haven't heard much about the parking study because it's more of a technical study. So our consultants have been working on that parking study. But now we need your help and we need your input by filling out the survey where we're providing this website. I think we're also putting it in the chat, right? Okay, so there you go in the chat. So so as part of our effort for the TOD specific plan, we're doing the parking study, and we want you to share your experience with parking officially through the survey, and it will become a part of the parking study that will be considered later on for hopefully some improvements in Florence-Firestone with how we manage parking. And another thing that was added into the chat was the project lead. His name is Rich Marshalian. Some of you guys have been engaging with him already. So if you have any questions about the parking survey or the parking study, you can email him directly. But in the meantime, please share this link with your friends and family in Florence-Firestone. And if you have social media accounts, please share it there. And the more information we can gather about everyone's experience with regards to parking, the more likely we can make changes that will really help versus just making changes without community input. So we really need your help to spread the word on the survey and to fill out the information. Thank you. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thanks, Pat. We do actually have a hand raised, so I'm gonna go ahead and allow you to unmute. It's from Juntos Florence-Firestone.
Hi, this is Ashley from Juntos. Just quick questions. Is the form also available in Spanish and in a paper form? Because I'm not sure if everyone might have access to, a phone, computer, or internet to complete the form. And when is the final date to complete it?
Great questions. So actually, I don't think we have a Spanish version yet, but we will look into developing one. And we can go ahead and print out copies if you'd like. So Ashley, I think we still have your email, so we could get those to you for distribution. So I'll probably have Rich reach out to you, or we can go ahead and print out the paper copies for you. And then we are hoping to collect information, I think, through at least the middle of September. We don't have a formal closing date yet for the survey, but for now, let's just call it like a month from now. So September 17th.
Thank you, Pat. That was actually one of the questions in the Q&A, if there was a deadline for the survey for the parking study. And then we also have a question in the Q&A. How can historic information be submitted in the future? Like, if new historic information is found, how can it be incorporated into this plan? Could there be a policy recommendation related to this? So let me go ahead and, Dean, do you have any input for that question?
So if there's any additional information, it could be sent to that email that I provided, and we can take a look at it.
Thank you. Nicole, do you mind putting in the email, just so everyone has it fresh in the chat? Thank you. Okay, thank you, Nicole. So the email's in there. I don't see any more questions or any hands raised. Does anyone have any last final comments, questions that they want to ask right now? If not, of course, you can always follow up through the emails. And then, of course, we link the project website. Okay, I don't see anyone. Sarah, do you mind going over to the next slide? Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and launch an exit survey. Again, thank you everyone for joining today. Please do the parking survey. As Pat mentioned, it's really important to get your feedback, and visit the websites to get more information. And just as a reminder, this will also be posted to the project website.
And can we also remind everybody about the deadline for the survey, right? Because we're also taking comments on the survey.
Yeah. Nicole, would you mind to put the DUDAC contact email and the date, which is August 31st?
Some people are still answering. Allison, I see you would like to answer a question live regarding the community members who participated.
Yeah, we needed a bit of clarification on that question, Manuel. There are 9 people from the community here today. I don't know if that's exactly what you were asking, though. Perhaps one of the other panelists could elaborate a bit on the number of community members who participated in the project overall.
I can speak to that a little bit if the question is pertaining to the stakeholder engagement. We worked very closely with Ashley and Yanel from Juntos, worked very closely with Jonathan Pacheco Bell. We also have a community advisory committee that was established for the Metro Area Plan project that we worked with as part of the Florence-Firestone Project 2. And we also worked with county departments specific to the area and different themes and issues that we identified throughout the context. So I don't know that I have an exact number, but we did have what I would call fairly good community involvement for this project and the development of the context and the survey.
Sarah, could you also mention how many, when you guys did the GIS mapping tool and people were like putting their like thoughts or comments, maybe that would be helpful in terms of indication of involvement, like how many unique properties were like suggested that we look at?
Yes, and that was a little bit of a harder thing to check because we had anonymous postings, but I believe that we had at least 10 different people post to the mapping tool. We also had a lot of information coming in through the emails. A lot of community residents were submitting emails throughout the project to us with additional information or people we could talk to.
Thank you, Sarah. Pat, I see you're responding to something in the chat, and then we have a question from Yanel. She has her hand raised. Hi, Yanel, you're muted.
I think one location that we could previously flagged was Miramonte Boulevard as like a potential historic district. And I don't think I saw that it was, I guess, flagged in this report. I think there were like 3 homes on Miramonte that were. But I do remember from like previous FFTOD, Community Atlas, somewhere in those reports that it had been identified as a potential, Miramonte Boulevard as having like potential for being a historic district, something about like the National Historic Register or something like that. But I guess I was wondering the rationale for it not, I guess what went into it not, I guess, being identified as a historic district.
Thank you, Yanel. And so just to make sure that everyone heard the question, you were asking about Miramonte Boulevard and the report not flagging it as an area for a historic preservation district?
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
unless I missed that, but yeah, that's what I noticed.
Got it. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and ask Allison to answer the question.
Sure. So when we were doing the fieldwork for the survey, we went to Miramonte Boulevard and looked at each individual house that had been previously flagged. And we noted that for the most part, the properties didn't retain integrity. They had been significantly altered. They weren't really conveying significance. However, there were a couple of properties that did stand out that we do believe would be eligible. And so we identified those on the list of eligible properties in the appendix. And we believe that those properties would be really strong candidates for a nomination.
So,
Thank you, Allison.
I just wanted to follow up. So in the Q&A, Manuel said he wanted to know how the survey, the historic survey, was disseminated, making sure that all voices from the community are brought into the conversation.
Thank you, Pat. I see that. Sarah, do you mind taking that question?
Sure. We sent the survey directly, all of the information about downloading the survey and how to provide feedback to anyone that sent us information, expressed interest in the project through the Metro Area Plan email. We also sent it to our Community Advisory Committee members for review. And we had social media posts that were coming from the county's social media accounts. And it is also posted on the county website and has been up since the beginning of August. And I believe there might have been a newsletter as well, Pat. I think Metro Area Plan newsletter that has a following too. So it went out with regards to the newsletter too. So we've used all of the sources for distribution that that we have and that we've been using for the larger Metro Area Plan.
Thank you, Sarah. So I'm just going to wait a moment to see if we have any more hands raised or any questions come in. All right, I don't see any. Thank you everyone for joining us today. We look forward to your feedback and again, parking survey, plugging it in again.
Thank you all so much for attending tonight. We really appreciate it.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, thank you.
Okay, I think it's just us. We can go.